hate crimes are the original domestic terrorism. And in fact, hate crimes were designed and they were drafted to cover the acts of domestic terrorism that were perpetrated by hate groups such as the Klan, going back to the late 1800s with the Klan Acts.
Terrorism was once a word we saved exclusively for killers who spoke other languages, dressed in strange clothes, worshipped a religion we neither understood or cared to, and who flew thousands of miles to ensure death and destruction came to America. It's a flawed definition on so many levels, and far too often hides the reality of what's happening in America. A good reason why the killing of 9 people in a South Carolina church needs not be called just racist terrorism, as Hillary Clinton intoned, but terrorism, period, against the victims and society in general. Numbers don't lie, and they show that after September 11th, nearly twice as many people have been killed by white supremacists, anti-government fanatics, and other non-Muslim extremists than by radical Muslims. Let's get started. He's the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, current Senior Counselor at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy's John Hanna. And we are also joined by Senior Political Scientist at the RAND Corporation, Richard Brennan. Gentlemen, I thank you both for joining us. And John, I'm going to go ahead and begin with you on this one, because when we look at the absolute stunning numbers here, that we're dealing with people here in America, how have we allowed ourselves to forget that we've got the terrorists right here in front of us and we've got to face them?
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody ought to forget. We had Timothy McVeigh about 20 years ago. Killed in excess of 150 people in Oklahoma City, and an agenda that was completely focused on undermining and destroying the U.S. government. 2001 is the answer to your question, Ed, that 9/11 changed everything and put the focus abroad on the Middle East, but it as this study indicates, while we need to remain focused on that threat from abroad, because it is very real, I don't think people ought to downplay it. But we've also got real problems here at home, obviously, that we have to focus on as well. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. This is a study by New America, a Washington research center that we speak of right here. So, John, I just want to get onto what you said right there. How did we allow this to happen? Was there an agenda? Were we simply just so focused on one thing that somebody made this decision that, oh, don't worry about the white supremacists and the people who are still Klan. Let's just let them sit on the side. That's ridiculous. Yeah, no, I don't have any great explanation. I'm not sure. The FBI, I think, has been focused on this, but there clearly has been a priority after 9/11 when 3,000 people were incinerated. I think and we didn't know anything about that enemy, that was an obvious focus. I'm always afraid that things here at home get incredibly politicized by both sides. When you start focusing on groups domestically, it obviously begins to touch on all kinds of domestic civil rights issues here inside our country domestically that I think becomes a political football and maybe becomes harder to handle than focusing abroad on foreigners who are out to get us. Richard, let me go ahead and take the 2 words that were just used here by John and throw them to you. Political football. Oddly enough, throw it to you. Because we didn't know enough about the jihadists at 9/11. We don't seem to know enough about our own terrorists on our own grounds here right now. So is this just the lawmakers in Washington, law enforcement as well, and others, whomever, just playing politics?
I don't think so, Ed. I think that when you look at the issue of domestic terrorism, that the law enforcement community, both at the local, state, and federal level, have really been focusing on this. The qualm I have with the study that was done by New American Standard and the numbers that they've got, well, they've got a couple of qualms with them. One is where they start the date is after 9/11. If you were to go back to 1994, well, then you can also include the Oklahoma City bombing and the 9/11 attacks, which obviously change the number. But the other thing that they do is they ignore a whole range of other terrorist organizations that operate in the United States that aren't white supremacists. The Black Liberation Army, the Animal Liberation Army, Occupy Wall Street. All of these organizations are terrorist organizations, and while they may not be killing lots of people, the destruction of property is incredible, and we've ignored, and this study ignores that. And I think we ignore that at our peril.
Excellent point. Let me change up here just a little bit. The president, and we play that soundbite coming in here, is ordering changes in the U.S. hostage policy. Richard, I want to come to you with this first, because the key here that most people are focusing on is no longer threatening criminal prosecution of the families. They're saying that that's a good thing. But there are others saying you can't deal with the terrorists, and you're setting it up for the wealthy to be able to get out, and the poor people still to not to be able to get their own people out of harm's way. What do you think?
This is a real thorny issue, and the reality is that we've never prosecuted a family member who has tried to negotiate on a ransom issue. So at one level, it's a red herring that we're even talking about it. The bigger issue, though, I think, is the aspect of pulling together a interagency task force that can keep the family members appraised of what's taking place and what's going on. To the extent that we haven't done that, shame on us. They need to know more. Our government can do better. But I think there is a danger in how far you go down between talking to terrorists, which I think who are holding hostages, which I think is a good thing, and the degree to which you're negotiating. And while the president said that he wasn't going to compromise, I think it's a slippery slope, and what we've seen in the release of the Taliban 5 is that maybe at times we will do this.
John, I got about a minute left here, and let me again work off what Rick said here just a moment ago. He used the words red herring. Do you think that that fits in this situation?
Well, it's clear to me that this issue of how we've treated the families is one big part of this, and I think the president was right to really try and get after that. Whether or not we've ever prosecuted anybody, the fact is that we have documentation of 2 officials in the Obama administration that actually posed threats against one of the families who were contemplating the idea of looking at a ransom payment, and that really is victimizing the victims of this. Of these awful events. These are excruciating calls for any government official. We know that paying ransom is bad. It only encourages more terrorism, funds the terrorists to go out and kill our soldiers and take more people and improve their capabilities. On the other hand, you've got to treat the families right. You've got to have all aspects of the U.S. government working together, working in sync with the families, treating these people with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
That's a key right there. All out of time. Gentlemen, I thank you so much. John, Hannah, Rick Brennan, always a pleasure to have you both on the show. We'll do it again, and hopefully we'll help to settle some issues next time.